This is Gun Fun here. What I'm talking about today is a few things that I think will help you out if you are new to reloading with the Lee Loadout, or if you've been using it for a long time. Some of these are just tips and tricks that wouldn't be obvious. I'm not going to go through the whole usage of the machine. There are other people who've done very good videos on that. Fortune Cookie 45 LC has a wonderful series on almost every aspect of reloading, and a guy who goes by 314299, which I'm guessing is a SMLE cast lead bullet from Lyman. I'll put the link there. He has done a few series specific to how to use the Lee Loadout itself efficiently. It would be pointless to duplicate his work, so if you want to know how to use it and want to know how to use it fast, go to those channels. This video is showing you things that I haven't seen in anybody else's videos, and a couple things stolen from 314299. Thanks for that. Okay, so let's go over a few modifications to the machine itself that will make it run better. First off, if you will note, the wad guide on mine, or shot attitude, whatever you would like to call it, is white. This camera isn't the best, but you should be able to see that I've got that I painted it white with spray paint and then put gradient markings on there. This makes a huge difference in the quality of your shells and the repeatability. And if you know anything about firearms, you know everything is about consistency and repeatability. And one of the big deficiencies of the Lee Loadout is that it requires you to gauge stuff by feel. This gave me a way to solve it, and I had a whole lot better looking slug loads, particularly anything where you're compressing the wad. If you're using these Winchester AA-12 type wads, they have a point where they buckle. One thing you'll know about engineering is anytime you're near a threshold, you're at the least consistent area. You either want to be way above the threshold or way below, not right at it. And quite a lot of my loads that I was using were right near the buckle point. So one would be lots of resistance to the crimp, and the next one would collapse. Being able to precisely gauge the right amount solved that. So here I'm going to show how this works. So you're sticking a shell in there. You put in your wad, and you just run it down to the mark you want to see right there. In this case, I color-coded my marks, and I offset them so they're not all in line with each other. This makes it so I'm not just looking for a particular mark, they're visually distinctive from each other. It's real crude and sloppy, but it makes a huge improvement. And by the way, these gun club shells work pretty well. Okay, what's my next thing on the list? I've noticed that Lee's volumetric charts are a great and useful thing. One thing about them, though, is they're all designed in the worst case scenario. You want to scale with these, or with any reloading equipment. If you're going to reload pure volumetric, trust his charts implicitly, do not ever consider exceeding them. However, I have found that in practice, it's almost always 2 bushings up or 2 gradients up from whatever Lee's chart is that gets me the correct weight of powder. So make a chart and see what you actually get, and write down and keep good records. One of the guys who helped me get started, MSR Diver, was kind enough to share me his charts, and every time I try out a new combination, I annotate it and put in my corrected weights. Saves me a lot of trouble, and it can theoretically save me from mistakes. Another thing that's a real nuisance with this is you'll notice that this will start to get powder built up on it, and it will stick. And when you pull it out, there will be smeared junk on there. Did it quit recording? Okay, no, it's still recording. Sorry for that interruption. One thing that solved that for me was take this out and wax it with Lee sizing wax and let that dry on there, and then polish it real good. Since then, I have much less static issue. You can also do dryer sheets in here to solve the static problem, and I haven't had the powder sticking problem since. Only had to do it one time, made a huge difference. Prior to that, I was having to clean it off regularly. Now, one of the big nuisances, or one of the big benefits of this, is that it comes with all the bushing, and then a full set of replacement bushings is around $5. That's wonderful when you compare it to any other product on the market, and that most of them don't come with the bushings you need, and they cost 15 to 30 bucks each. And if you buy a used one, it almost certainly comes with the wrong bushing. So if you're a poor guy looking to start out, or you just don't want to mess with all of that, these are great. However, the downside of bushings is they're not always exactly what you want. Well, since a whole set is cheap, what you can do is use a round file like a chainsaw file and slightly increase one, obliterate the markings on the bushing, and mark it with some nail polish or something so you can tell it's not standard, and you now have a custom size. And that nail polish comes in handy in another way too. What if a bushing is slightly too big? Well, you put a drip of nail polish on the inside of the cavity and let it dry. Weigh your drops, and you can therefore decrease the volume and get the exact weight you want. Again, obliterate the markings on your bushing and relabel it so you can tell that you don't have a standard bushing. Make it really obvious. I haven't had to do that to any of mine, and I've been mostly using a machine with an adjustable charge bar since then. The next thing that's a nuisance is while you're weighing charges or switching out loads, you will often have this thing full, and you don't want to leave it open, and you don't want to leave your powder in sunlight to degrade, so at least make a hood for it if you're going to store it. Here is 314299's mod. Drill a hole in the corner of this cover, slap the cover over there, hold it on there, pull these outward, and this whole mess comes off. Hold that tightly on there, and you can dump your powder out, or your, well, yeah, this side's shot, or wait, which side do I have it on? Shot, then flip it around and do the powder. That sure beats having to work the thing back and forth 40 times to empty a half full thing just because it was a half a grain too light in your drop and you need to move up to the next bushing. Well, or a full grain or whatever. And yes, it's a kludge, but man, what a helpful kludge that is. And I learned that just as I'm selling this to a friend online. So it's kind of like fixing up your house right before you sell it. You do all the things that you wish you'd done 20 years ago. That one is a really nifty mod. Another thing I do for the bushings I use a lot, I put marker on them. Different colors, make them easy to see so I don't have to hunt through the bag forever and ever. You'll notice I've also put a label saying what's in there. Safety thing and convenience thing. I like to have the whole recipe. Keeps you from making really dumb mistakes that blow somebody up. Let's see where I left off. Here is one of the best things that you can do to improve it. One of the big complaints that I have about the lead load all, and that I see quite a few other people have, is you tend to get flat crimps like this. Step back here and make sure you can see that well. Okay. The one on the right in the green shell is actually a hollow that I made earlier, but that's basically what you get. These are ones that I made back when I started the shell. A lot of them are open in the middle like that. This works, but it's not ideal. What you really want is crimps that look more like this. These ones don't come fully closed, a little more pre-crimp and setting the wad a little deeper would have solved that. But notice how it's got a rim. Now these ones I actually made on a mech press, but this is the crimp that I get now roughly with the Lee, minus a final taper in at the very top edge. One thing you can do with most other brands of press is you get a final crimp die which will taper in the roll at the end, but you can at least get the roll at the end, which locks in the press, especially if you have something with a lot more wad pressure. It will give you a much better final shot. So, how do we get this mod? Well, the main thing is, when you bring this all the way down, this bumps there and limits the travel. As far down as that goes is as far as you get. So if that's only pushing it far enough to get you flat, you're probably not getting enough pre-crimp, and you're definitely not getting enough final crimp. So pre-crimp and crimp is limited by this point, and final crimp is limited by this point. So the simple solution is measure and file the bottom of this so that you get a little more travel. And then I went and took a reamer and cleaned up the inside edge so it sort of funnels in nicely. I also put a little mark here like 314299 does so that I can line up my crimps. I find giving a little twist like that when you do your pre-crimp will help. If I said that earlier, sorry for the redundancy. Anyway, what I did was simply put a spacer with a hole in the middle so I'm not pushing in the primer underneath here, and experimented until I knew how much material to remove. If you do one thing to your press, do that one. Well, this is a big help too. There's really no reason not to do both of those. The whole press costs $65 new right now, I think. I'd rather void my warranty. This whole assembly is like $10 to replace it. So, you know, there's really no reason not to if you're not getting full crimps. So, that's it. You want crimps that look like this. They stay together better. They feed better. The general rule of thumb is you want to seat your wad so that the top edge of the petals are down where I was going to do a demonstration with this half open shell. You want the top edge of the petal to be between 5/16 and 3/8 down from the top edge of the shell, and you want the opening in your pre-crimp to be 3/16 or maybe even a little smaller. I believe Lyman's Fifth says 1/4 inch, but I've found I consistently get better crimps. If you have a hole in the middle, set your wad a little deeper, pre-crimp a little more. Oh, did it quit recording? Oh, good, it's still recording. Sorry. If you have swirl, that means you're doing a little bit too much wad down and pre-crimp. Now, some shells are not very consistent on their trim length, so you'll get some that are even and some that are swirled. I'd say that's better than some that are even and some that are gapped. Choose what you want, though. To me, it's not worth it to go and trim all my holes and uniform them for that little bit, because I don't think a swirl honestly hurts anything. But a big effect of consistency is having a good strong crimp. And everything about firearms is about consistency. The other thing is, like putting a slug load together, some loads will need a fair amount of compression, and if you store them for a while, they'll want to pop back open. So if you have, if your crimp wants to dish up, so it's kind of conical looking, that means you need to set your wad a little deeper and maybe account for spring back. And if it's a little dished in, that means you're setting your wad a little too shallow. Or I mean, you're setting it a little too deep, and so you need it a little higher. That's why these gradient marks are a huge benefit, is you can dial it in and figure exactly, oh, I want it on the blue line, or I want it just covering the blue line, and I'm looking right at the wad guide there. So I'm saying, oh, you know what, I want the line right here. This is the one that comes out with this load. And so, you know, when you start making a load, make 3 or 4 of them until you figure it out right, and then your entire rest of the lot will be very quick to get it exactly right, much more consistently than you could ever do by just feel. And so that will make you better ammo. And it doesn't really take any more time. For one thing, you're not having to stop and feel carefully. You can move it down quick and then slow down that last little bit, and you get real precise, crisp ammo out of a very cheap machine, and pretty efficiently. I think I was doing a couple hundred an hour. I don't really remember. Anyway, that's it. Hope these help you out. And again, if you're new to this kind of thing, I highly recommend checking out Fortune Cookie 45 LC's channel, and also 314299 for lead loader specific stuff. Not that that's all he does. Anyway, thank you. Bye.